Hey everyone, and welcome to Container Gardening with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Rho Theta Omega Chapter. My name is Dr. Ayana Kersey McMullen, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. So, what we're going to be doing is working on planting a bush variety string bean today. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about why it is so important to learn how to grow your own food. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up in a family where people migrated from the south to the north in order to look for more opportunities here in the north, but they brought a lot of their habits and traditions from the south with them. And one of those things is gardening. So I grew up with grandparents who gardened, my mother gardened, my great aunt and uncles all gardened as well. And so I had the pleasure of watching them go out into their backyards or wherever they had their gardens, put a seed in the ground and yield food for our families. In fact, my paternal grandmother, who we called my mom, she actually was part of a large community garden in West Philadelphia. It was around 57th and Haverford, as I remember, which is now the site of a senior apartment complex, ironically, but there was a large community garden where a bunch of elders from the community decided they were going to convert an abandoned lot into garden space. So each person had their own little plot of land in this garden and they could grow whatever they wanted to grow there. And so my mom used to take me with her in the spring and the summer months to learn how to plant food. And though most of what I was gardening was spring onions, I was very, very proud of the crop that I was responsible for taking care of in that community garden. And that's what made me really love gardening, was being there with my elders, putting my hands in the dirt, and then seeing this beautiful yield of food that we can then eat later. The other important thing, and as I said, I'm a physician and I spend a lot of time talking to my patients about the connection between health outcomes and how they live, really, lifestyle. So lifestyle is what you eat. Do you exercise? How do you manage your stress? Do you sleep? Do you smoke? Drink alcohol to excess or use drugs, things of that nature. And the beauty of all of that is that we have control over all those things. One of the most important things that I really emphasize for my patients in my clinic is that food is medicine. In fact, food is our first medicine. Before we ever take a medication that we have to pick up from the pharmacy, food was our first medicine, and food has the power to heal. But we also know that access to good food is a challenge for a lot of people in communities across the city and across the world. And so one powerful way that you can create solutions for yourself is to learn how to create or to grow your own food. So that's why we decided we were going to do this project around container gardening, because you don't need to have a big yard in order to plant vegetables. In fact, before I even had a raised bed to grow my fruits and vegetables for my family, I did all of my gardening in containers. So I'm talking about things like cabbage and kale and collard greens and string beans and sugar snap peas and tomatoes and onions and peppers. I did all of those things in containers, and so you can too. So as long as you have a window that you can put your plant in so they can get about 6 hours of sunlight a day, or you have a sunny stoop or steps or a porch, or even if you have the gift of having a front yard or a backyard, you can grow your food and you can do those things in containers to supplement your food supply. So we're going to get started today on this, and as you know, again, we're going to grow bush variety string beans. We selected this type of string bean because the beauty of this type of string bean is that it does not require a trellis or a structure to keep it so that it can actually hang off of. When it grows, it will grow basically like a little bush inside of your pot. So that is the bush variety string beans, and that should have come with your packet if you were able to obtain a packet. So all you need for this activity, and I'm going to sit here just so you can see me working through. All you need for this activity is your little starter pot. And if you want, you can actually start with a larger pot because you're going to need to transfer your seedling to a larger pot anyway so it can accommodate its growth, okay? You're also going to need your seed. And as I said in the instruction packet that we gave to you all, it's a good idea to actually soak your seed overnight because that allows it helps it to sprout and germinate, okay? So just soak it in a little tap water. If you have a tool to actually scoop your soil into your pot, a nice tool is this, but you can also just use a plastic cup. In fact, you can use a plastic cup to actually start your seedling in a plastic cup as long as it has holes on the bottom. And then you also need your soil. So I'm using this type of soil here as a potting soil. And again, you want to make sure that when you are planting in containers that you use a potting soil because potting soils are actually going to have it's specially formulated so that it drains better so that your plants do not experience root rot. And that's very, very important. Same reason why it's important that your pot, and I'm going to show it to you now, I just cleaned it so it's a little wet, has drainage holes on the bottom. And this particular one that I have has drainage holes and it has a little cap that goes on the bottom. And then on top of that, it has this little drainage pan. But again, that's so that your plant, the excess water can drain off of your plant and you don't experience root rot. And at the end, I'm going to show you a plant that I started a couple of weeks ago that has already started to sprout. And I'm very excited. I'm a proud plant mama, so you can see that in the end. So we're going to get started. I'm going to use gloves just because they're new and they're cute. A very nice church that I've been doing some community work for, talking about health and gardening, actually gave me a very nice gift of a gardening set. So I'm going to use the gloves they gave me today because I'm excited about them. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And again, I'm going to start with my pot here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by putting some soil in the pot. Okay, so I didn't actually even open this. They gave me this bag of soil. I didn't even have to scoop any from my bag from outside. I'm just going to use this one. And actually, instead of using my fancy tool, I'm going to use my cup. Because as you can see, I'm doing this in the house and I don't want to make a mess. And a cup will help me not to make a mess, I think. So when you're putting your soil in here, and many of you may have received a portion of soil in a bag, and we tried to give you enough to start this project. You just want to put enough in there that it is about half the size of the pot. So you don't want to overfill it, okay? So for me, that's going to be about 2 cups of soil, okay? Or a cup and a half. And then once I get that cup and a half in there, I kind of spread it around. And again, you don't want to overpack the pot. And the reason for that, or like pack it down, like, you know, I don't know if any of you do any baking where you put brown sugar in a cup and you pack it down in order to make sure it's a full cup. You don't want to do that with soil because you want the soil to still have some air in it because that's important for your seeds and for your plants as well. So you want it to kind of be loosely in the pot. So what I did was I put about a cup and a half of this type of cup in the pot, and it filled up about half of the pot, maybe a little bit more. And then I'm going to take my finger and put a little hole in there. And the reason why I'm putting the hole in there is because I'm going to use that to put my seed in it. So now I'm going to fish out my little seed from the water, and you can see it there. Okay, these gloves are a little big for my hands. Put that seed in the soil, okay? So you can see the little seed in there. And then I'm going to put a little bit more soil on top of it. So again, you don't want to over bury it in the soil because again, you want it to be loose and free so that it can kind of peek up through that soil. So you really only need to put about a half of a cup if you're using this type of cup, or maybe about an inch of soil on top of that. And then that part is done. So the soil's in there. Okay. Now that that's done, the question is about watering. So I'm actually going to take my gloves off for this part because I need to show you something. So when you are trying to determine how much you water your plants. Now, right now, we're going to have the plants indoors, and you don't have to convert them to outdoors, but eventually I will take mine outdoors. But when they're indoors, the environment of your house is such that you usually don't have to water it quite as much. So one good rule of thumb, at least compared to outside, because outside, like in the summertime, it's going to be very hot, and the water is going to evaporate, and so it's going to be subjected to harsher conditions outside, and so you may need to water it a little bit more. But inside, typically you don't. So one way that I determine whether or not I need to water my plant is just to take my index finger and I stick it into the soil down to this knuckle here, okay? I stick it into the soil down to this knuckle. And if the soil doesn't stick, like it didn't here, if the soil didn't stick, then that means it's dry enough to put a little bit of water in. But if the soil really sticks to your finger, or it's kind of muddy or gummy, then leave it alone. Because again, you don't want to put too much water in your pot, because that can lead to root rot, and then your plant will die. So it's very much like human planting. You don't want to be a hover plant, or a hover mother, a helicopter mother. That's what it's called, a helicopter mother. You want to give it just enough of the nutrients that it needs to grow, but not to overdo it, because then you'll end up kind of smothering your plant baby, just like you would an adult baby. So now that I've tested the water and I see that it actually needs a little bit of water, I'm going to take some water. I have some water here. I'm going to take some water, and I'm just going to lightly water the plant. Very lightly, not a lot, okay? Because again, I want the plant to soak up the water that it needs, but I don't want the soil to be sopping wet, because that is a bad combination for most plants. You can easily kill a plant that way. So that is pretty much it. You will start to see some activity in your pot as long as this seed is a good seed. You should start to see some activity in your plant in about a week and a half to 2 weeks. I started to see some activity in about 7 to 10 days in my plant, as long as I kept it in the sun and I gave it a light watering. And then you should have a yield. This is an exciting part. You should have a yield of string beans in about 60 days. So you'll get to pull your string beans. And let me tell you what that's going to look like. So what it'll look like is the leaves will look like, they'll look kind of like this on your plant. So it'll be a little bush. It'll be a canopy of leaves. And when you peel the little leaves up, you pick the little leaves up, you look in there, and then there'll be little bunches, little clusters of string beans in there that you can go in and pick. And when you pick it, you want to make sure that you pick it close to the stem and kind of snap it off. That's why they call them snap peas sometimes, but you want to snap it off. You don't want to pull it, because you want to maintain that nice structure of branches and leaves there, so that more string beans will grow. But if you're too rough with it, then you're going to hurt the plant. It's a living thing. So you want to make sure that you just kind of snap off those little beans, wash them, and then eat them. That's the exciting part. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the plant that I planted, my string bean plant that I planted about 2 weeks ago at this point. So proud of it. So again, I have a bigger pot and I have a drain bin or drain pan underneath. I couldn't figure out the word pan. So I have a drain pan underneath it. But you can see, look at my baby. Isn't he cute? So yeah, and you can even see, I'm such a dork, but look, you can even see this is where the seed was right here. These little branches here are actually the bean, and that's my plant. And this plant is about, if I had to make a guess, is about 7 inches tall, 7 or 8 inches tall already, and that's in 2 weeks. So soon we'll have a nice plant that will have some beautiful string beans on. And again, I will take this outside eventually. So if you decide that you want to convert your plant to an outside plant, what I would suggest that you do is that you wait until the last frost of the season. And the reason for that is because the frost can actually kill the plant seedling. This usually happens late April, early May, that you'll have the last frost of the season. And what happens when you have that frost, it'll drop down sometimes into the 20s or 30s, 40s. So you can imagine it will kill a plant, a very young, tender plant. So you want to wait until we've had that last frost and then put your plant outside in an area where it can get a lot of light during the day, and then just continue to watch it and water it and enjoy the process. See what happens, and then get some really good food for yourself and your family. So this was really fun. I am looking forward to hearing about how all you all do with your plants. I hope that you've enjoyed this and you've learned something. But again, remember, Dr. Ayana said, food is medicine. It is the most important thing that you can do for yourself, to eat good foods, eat a large variety of fruits and vegetables. Right now, the recommendation is about 5 sources of plants in your diet every day, and that's at minimum. So that looks about 2 fruits a day and up to 3 to 4 servings of vegetables a day. So you want to make sure you get all those things so you can get all those nice nutrients, your macronutrients and your micronutrients, and which means your protein and your carbohydrates and your fats and your vitamins and your minerals and your antioxidants, all of those things, including protein, everybody. All those things can be found in vegetables and your plants, and you're going to do this for yourself. So have a good time, and I'll see you later. Take good care. Bye-bye.